Everybody, welcome back to the Leader Living Life podcast. This is our third part in the marketing series with my friend Lori Blatt. And in this episode, we're going to talk about a couple of really important questions. What is marketing? How Lori helps clients build a plan, and why you need one or you're wasting money. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's very actionable for the listeners. You'll leave today with more to-dos, just like the prior two episodes. So with that, Lori, welcome back.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me back.
It's awesome to see you again. Let's jump right in, Lori. Do you want to, let's start with the first question. What is marketing?
So let's start with the official definition of marketing. If you would look it up in the dictionary, as a verb, it's the act or process of selling or purchasing in a market. And as a noun, there can be kind of two versions of the definition. So noun number one is it is that process. It's the process or technique of promoting, selling, or distributing a product or service. As a noun number two, it can be an aggregate of functions that involve moving goods from producer to consumer. So you read that and you're like, so what's marketing? And so I've actually, if you go to slide number two, Eric, we have some slides for the people who are watching on YouTube. I've kind of redefined what marketing is. So there you can see the official definitions of marketing. And then if we go to the next one, Eric, it's how I kind of build out the definition of marketing. So first, it's be clear on your product or service. If there's any question about what you are really offering the marketplace, that is your first and foremost issue to address. You've got to know what it is that you are delivering to your customers and why your product or service is really what they need, right? So the second thing is you need to define the marketing. You need to know your customer. And that is so important. We talked about this last week, Eric, with building out your buyer's journey and really understanding who your ideal client avatar is. And there may be multiples, but getting really, really clear on who they are, how they engage through the buying process, and how you engage with them to nurture them along through know, like, and trust, and to that point where they're going to buy from you. And then what is the experience for your customer after the sale? Know your competition. That's the next thing to define in this context of marketing. And, it often comes up, in conversation with colleagues, Lori, who's your competition? And my response sometimes catches them off guard, and they look at me like, well, that's kind of, I don't know, bold or flippant. And I'm like, it's not really. But when they ask me that question, I'm like, my competition is me. Mm-hmm. Now, do I know who is in the area of what I do? Sure. But, in today's world, it's not, it used to be, especially for me, like an agency, it used to be, well, who's your local competition? Who's in the region? Who's seeing your clients or potentially the same prospects face to face? Who's dropping in on them? Who's reaching out to them? Well, the internet over the years has changed that. Now you can work with clients no matter where you are, right? And so your competition, your circle of competition has grown as well. And if you alone focus on, I'm competing with X or Y, mm-hmm. It's overwhelming. You need to be your own competition and be better in what you do, and really know, again, what your product or service is, how that makes you unique, and how you need to keep that engagement going and unique and on trend and delivering the most value to your client base. So know your competition, yes, know who's in your arena, be aware of what they're doing, but at the end of the day, figure out how you better yourself to deliver for your customers.
Yeah, because
Go ahead, Derek. I'm sorry.
if you're always chasing, you're never leading.
Exactly.
So if and well, and particularly in your profession, but uh, in most, we're trying to come up with something original and different from what everybody's doing. And if you're so hyper focused on your competitor, you start to mimic them. And now
Yes.
you're always coming out with something right after they do. And you're never in front with something that differentiates you in the marketplace. You're always trailing. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get really overwhelmed in what someone else is doing, not recognizing that maybe their customer or audience is totally different, and you need to focus on your niche. And I think that's another piece that really should probably be a bullet point on here, is having a niche, knowing what your specialty is, having a streamlined focus. Again, kind of falls under know your customer as well. Like, you can't serve everyone. You've got to be really clear. You're going to deliver the most value. You're going to be able to focus your marketing dollars and your message if you know exactly who you need to be talking to. Because if you're casting too wide of a net, it is going to be an uphill battle that will just cost you a lot of money and not get you much return. So know your message, know how you are going to be talking to them. And I think this is really starting to drill down into why it is so important to have a plan. Is you've got to know how you want to talk to your customer to deliver that unique product or service that you've got. And your message will evolve over time. I think I may have shared before, Eric, in our conversations, that at least for me in the marketing realm, I've got to evolve my business every 18 to 24 months, because technology changes, methodologies change, metrics change. So you can't, you really need to be able to adapt, and your message adapts on that timeline as well. But the core of what you're delivering should be very concrete. So there's using multiple touches, right? So this is where advertising comes in, right? So on that next bullet point, that multiple touches helps to create that know, like, and trust. So this is going back to last week's episode about the buyer's journey, and really how you end up choosing how you show up to your prospects, how you show up for your clients, your customers, and using multiple touch points. It's not just a one channel approach. You need to think broader. Social is great, but we'll kind of get into a little more specifics later. But the idea that you need to have multiple ways of touching that client, because of, one, their attention span, and two, just the effectiveness of social media. People only see maybe 20 to maybe 30% of your feed at any given time. So you can't assume that, you post once and the whole world has seen it. You've got to really have create a rhythm, and that rhythm is so important in marketing. And educate. So the bottom line with marketing, at least as I approach it, and I think a lot of people now are understanding this today, is you need to be educating your customer, not just selling to them. They
Hmm.
have a lot of options out there to buy from, but who's helping them make good decisions with no strings attached? That again goes back into that buyer's journey where you're building that awareness, you're building that relationship, know, like, and trust. You're moving them through, you're helping them make educated decisions about what to do next in your realm of expertise that can help you then be that expert that they come to engage and have a paying engagement with. So
It fits on something you brought up last week too. This is really a continuum. It's not a standalone project with a finite end date. Um, to your point, the methods of communicating are evolving at a rapid clip. So to engage in marketing is to do it on a continuous basis that's always being refined as your environment changes, whether that's customer, competitor, message, all those types of things.
yeah, I mean, think about it, Eric. There was a time when I did business, I'll date myself here, but there was a time that we did business without websites. There was a time that we did business before email, CRMs. There was a time we did business before texting. And I mean, so you can just see how much marketing has evolved over the years, and it's going to continue to change. And you've got to have some plan in place to be able to navigate those changes as they make sense for you. And that's where a plan really begins to come in to its critical importance to a company. So let's go to the next slide and just kind of wrap up what marketing is and what it is not. So it is a marathon, and if you click, yeah, it's a marathon. It builds trust. I probably have my syncs out of alignment
That's right.
here, Eric. Yeah,
I'll pull them all up. How's that?
there you go. So marketing is a marathon, and you just refer to it as a continuum, and you're absolutely right. And a lot of times companies will make the mistake, they will get approached maybe by a local entity about placing an ad in this program or supporting this local event at a golf charity. All well and good, but if that's not part of your plan, that sprint or that one little hit might be a nice gesture in the community, but what does it mean to your overall marketing? And it could be money spent better elsewhere if it's not aligned with your core values, your mission, your vision for where you want your company to go. Marketing builds trust. This is, again, going back to that buyer's journey, drilling that into everybody. This is that know, like, and trust, that building the relationship. Marketing is so much about building relationships and building an experience with your prospect and moving them to being a customer. And it is not sales. Like, marketing in of itself is not going to close any deals. It's going to help move the buyer along. At the end of the day, though, there's a sales process that comes into play, and that is where the deals get closed. So I always refer to it as marketing brings the customers to the door, and sales opens the door and walks them in. So that's really important to understand. Knowing your customer and talking to them and not trying to shout to everyone. The educational component of your marketing, pulling them in versus and engaging them versus the hard sell of pushing out at them all the time. And then we've got, it's multiple activities, it's that continuum, it's a blend of different touches, and it's not a single one-off event. So if we want to go to the next slide, Eric, I want to just, touch on the fact that when I help clients build out a plan, we look at all the options that are available. We've gone through a lot of groundwork. Hopefully they have a strategic plan that marketing can build off of. If they don't have one, I will do a little bit of a SWOT with them, figure out, where the gaps are, look at their branding, what they've done in the past, kind of their as is state, how they got to where they are, and then figure out what tools do we want to use, what makes sense for their audience. We've identified who their audience is. We've clarified their message, because over time, our messages can get scattered and off the rail. Sometimes we don't realize that we'll keep old messages as well as layer on new ones and not realize just how convoluted it's gotten for people. So
Or
if you
even
want to kind of,
stale. Yeah.
yeah, and we've got mixed messages out there, and especially if I've seen it with companies who have internal sales forces, but they don't have a marketing department per se. It's sometimes they want to tuck marketing just under sales, and while they are very symbiotic, they are very different. And it's rare when someone can wear both hats. So I think it's always good for companies that don't have a internal marketing department to work with someone on the outside, even if it's just getting a plan in place, understanding that buyer's journey, and just giving sales a framework of, here, this is what we're doing, and this is how we need to approach our marketing. So a lot of times we'll help clients execute on a marketing plan, or we will turn over the marketing plan, and it is literally, I call them blueprints, because it gives them this visual layout of this is how we're going to build out our brand, construct our message, and how we're going to direct it to our audience or audiences. So if you want to click through the rest of that screen, Eric, and bring up all the options that are available. So this is actually, when we think about marketing and building out a plan, there are a lot of things that a company can do, but you don't need all of them. You need what makes sense for you and your customer. So I know I'm drilling that. I may be sounding redundant, but often what I'll see is companies reacting to opportunities, or feeling like they need to do this. They saw maybe their competitor in their space doing X, and it's really being able to step back and build out a plan that helps to keep you in your lane, so that you are focused on what you're doing. You know where you're going to spend your dollars. You know where you're going to put your time. I talked about, one of the things that we talked about in our lead-in to our conversation today is why you need a plan, or you're wasting money. The problem a lot of companies have is they will do ready, fire, aim. And again, this goes back to an opportunity comes up, or there's somebody comes up with an idea, let's do this, and you just kind of fire at will at it. And then when you pull back, you realize, wow, I'm not sure what we were expecting to get out of that. I'm not sure how it fit into what we're going to do 3 months, 9 months, a year from now. Having your marketing plan aligned with your strategic plan, which should have quarterly goals, annual goals, your BHAG, that's 3-5 years out there. Having your marketing be aligned with that is so powerful and important, and is really going to help you stay online with your budget. So a lot of people, and
Yeah.
we talked about this in the first episode, Eric, you know, a lot of times when people are forced with tough economic decisions, falling sales, the economy as we're, you know, dealing with it today, they want to cut marketing. And marketing really is your, you know, it's your lifeline to your customers.
Yeah, especially now. Yep.
Yeah.
And you
So,
know, the ability to recalibrate, whether that's on a quarterly or a monthly basis, I think is important, in that sometimes you're trying something new and maybe you pick the wrong metric to measure it with. And if you're not measuring it, sometimes the answer on how do you improve the result is to do it harder, right?
yeah.
To be more aggressive about it, or whatever. When if you have someone such as yourself that understands what metrics matter for that channel, you can find that, but it's just the wrong channel for you. The audience you're after isn't there. We talked about this with things like TikTok, which
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm on it. I'm not opposed to it, but not every customer, not every industry has their customers there. It's not meaningful. And I would make the same argument for Twitter and Instagram and things like that. It also just struck me that a lot of companies, I believe, jump into some of these things because they're constantly being sold those channels. They're being actively marketed that they should be on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, as well as radio and TV and print. Like they're on the other end of a sales effort or a marketing effort to make them believe that these channels are very important to them. And without a plan and without solid metrics, you become more of a buyer than a marketer in some
Mm-hmm.
of these channels and outlets.
Well, and you know, there's another component to this too. Marketing ends up being, it's your strategy, right? It's your creative strategy, messaging strategy. That's your branding strategy. That's how I look at marketing.
Mm-hmm.
The tangibles that come out of it are really your advertising pieces. But there's a component to marketing that is so important, and that is having your team. And what having a plan will do is it will get your team all on the same page, using the same language, having consistent marketing materials, representing the brand well. And that plan, it's that tangible document that you can use to onboard a new salesperson or customer service rep,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It is so important that we do, so for some of my clients, you know, we're actively posting on LinkedIn and Facebook within their, you know, company pages. And that is a good practice to have, and we do it on a consistent basis. The other component to that is everybody within the company needs to realize their role in supporting the marketing plan and making those personal connections, sharing things that have been posted or in the archives on the website, and creating those one-off relationships with their key prospects, and building that relationship with all the marketing that's being done within the company. So it is very much a person driven activity across the entire company. It is not simply the CMO or the president or whomever is driving the marketing initiative within a company. It's not solely their role.
Right.
They're guiding the process, and they're the you know, they're watching over what should be added, what should be taken away, how is this evolving. But they're really the leader for the marketing initiative, for the brand within the company, to be sure that all of the company is talking with a unified voice.
Yeah, and I think even in companies, and this is greater than people like CMO and in even the topic of marketing. Um, we've talked about that. I'm a collaborator in my DNA, so I thrive having interactions with people, and I love it when people can challenge my ideas, my thinking, that type of stuff. So even when you have a very skillful and talented and experienced CMO, it's not a critical commentary on that person's work or capability to bring someone like yourself in to introduce some new ideas or to challenge some things because the outside environment has changed. You can be, so your nose against the tree to the point that you don't even know what kind of tree it is or how big it is or whatever.
Yeah.
And to have somebody come in from the outside with a broader view to kind of pull you back from the tree to go, oh, hey, it's a pine tree, and oh, look, there's a whole forest too. Bringing in that outside counsel, it is a healthy part, in my opinion, of a marketing plan to be introducing some checkpoints in your process to get a third party independent perspective about where you're going and whether you're still on track.
Absolutely. There's a story, I love Simon Sinek, and there's a great story that he was giving a talk literally like a day apart to Microsoft and to Apple. And he was at Microsoft first. So this is all about your competition. He was at Microsoft first, and they were showing him this new gadget that they came out with. And I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I believe it was supposed to be for music. And a whole new gadget, and they were talking about how it was better than Apple's iPod, and going down all of the features and benefits that made it better. And they gave him one. And the next day, he was with Apple, and he happened to be in a car with an executive from Apple. And he said, hey, he was poking the bear, so to speak. And he said, hey, I got this new gadget from Microsoft, and it does X, Y, and Z, and it's actually, it's better than the iPod. And what do you think? And the executive, to his credit, just nodded his head and said, you're right. And the moral of the story here goes that Microsoft was so focused on taking market share from Apple that they were focused on a very finite game, where Apple was looking out to creating the iPhone, which totally changed our lives. And they weren't getting caught up in what Microsoft was doing, because they had a clear plan, and they were not getting lost on their competition. They were sticking to what their, how they wanted to help solve problems for their consumers. So their marketing, their strategy was all about the consumer and not their competition. So I just wanted to relate that story, because it's such a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was our earlier conversation about, are you chasing your competitor or are you leading? And Apple had already seen past the device and was moving towards things like the iPhone, which makes the iPod generally obsolete, but also their move to the App Store, iTunes, and all of the service-based stuff that they were enabling in their future generations of products that Microsoft unfortunately was never able to follow through on that.
Yeah. And I will, full disclaimer, I'm an Apple product lover. So, but I love that story for the lesson that it really can help people see that it's just really important to be on point with your marketing and stay focused on the things that matter. So I think just to kind of maybe wrap up for people, Eric, is just like, so, all right, we've talked about the plan, right? Why it's important to have one, what marketing is, but kind of, where does everybody start with doing this? And I think it is important that when you're looking to interview a firm, honestly, if they don't ask you if you have a strategic plan, make a note of it. Because in my opinion, without a strategic plan in place, marketing cannot be effective.
I
And
totally agree.
right. And that is always my first question to a client. Where's your strategic plan? And again, if they don't have one, or it's more than 5 years old, then I know where we have to start. And I'll either do a mini, just a mini, SWAT to regroup around where we are today. And I have a marketing matrix that I do with them on their services to figure out really where, one, their most profitable services and most in-demand services are, and what should fall to the wayside. It's amazing the services that and products people will keep just because they've always been there. And without that first question answered, that is key. So you should look for a firm that's going to ask for that information. Two, are they specific to your industry? The more niche your agency can be, the better. It's not necessarily an end all. However, when you've got a marketing agency that is specific, they've got a specific expertise in a certain industry or with a certain product, they're going to be able to help you get through a learning curve much faster. They're going to come through the learning curve much faster, understanding where you're at and your product. So that is also a key thing. And actually, one of the things that I have in vetting a client is I actually have like a 5-question scorecard that I use when I'm engaged with a new client. Do they have internal marketing existing? Are they used to working with a marketing firm? Am I dealing with the decision makers? And there's a couple other questions on there, and I actually score the client based on that. And what that tells me, Eric, and literally, this is also part of what I put into their marketing plan, is we change out the questions based on who their ideal customer is, so that they can start evaluating and qualifying who they should be doing business with. Because depending on how someone scores, it's literally just a +1, a 0, or a -1, depending on where they fall on the scale. I am then making a decision. Either this is my ideal client, say if they score a 5, or maybe they only score a 3. And it's a wake-up call for me to say, okay, why would I want to take on this client? Because there's obviously some points here that are missing in having this be my ideal client. And am I willing to sacrifice those ideal attributes in order to take on this work? Is it worth maybe not having the ideal relationship that I would want? So it's a real wake-up call that I think all companies should have. So as companies look to hire a marketing firm, they should create a scorecard up front about what it is, what their expectations are that they want from that marketing relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. In my world, we use a couple of different things to do that, but the context of a user story is one that we'll use. The other thing that we focus a lot on, and I think both buyers and sellers need to really consider the cultural alignment. You know, I'm very direct, plain in my language. You know, as a 20 plus years CIO, there's just a comfort level I have in communicating plainly at the highest level of any org. Well, some clients just aren't ready for that plainness and that directness. And if if we culturally aren't going to align, the engagement's not going to work. So there are times that I will pass on an engagement because that cultural alignment isn't there. Conversely, buyers should also pay attention to the same thing. Whoever you're bringing in, do they align with your culture? Are you going to be able to get along? What's going to happen when the inevitable problems come up? Are you going to be able to work together through them with high EQ and not turn it into a blame game type exercise to deal with those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is really marketing is such an important component of doing business, and it's kind of, I guess, my DNA and my mission is to be sure that when I engage with clients, that I'm bringing my best practices to them and really helping them sort through all of the noise out there and really get clarity and focus on how they can best deliver their unique products and services to their audience, and help them grow, help them hit their goals in revenue as well as customer service. That's so important.
I agree with you totally. Sorry, I was on mute there. So I think we have nailed our three questions: the what, the how, and the why. That is, what is marketing? How you help clients build a plan, and why you need it, meaning it being the plan, or you're going to waste both time and money. So great job again, Lori. I appreciate all the information you're sharing here with the listeners. So we have another episode coming next week, right?
We do. I don't have my notes handy, Eric. I forget.
No worries.
I forget what we're gonna chat about. I think we're going to talk about how marketing is different from sales and the advertising piece. But I'll have to get back to you on that.
That's all right. I know I have it somewhere in my email too. That's okay. So thanks again, Lori. This was a really, really concise and powerful episode. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And to all
Thank
listeners, thank you for following us. And we will have another episode for you on this topic next week. We're also recording separately an episode this week with Canine, the Foundation for Canine Heroes. I know I'm messing their name up. We're going to do an episode with the founder and talk about how he got inspired to start his program, his charity, where they are today. And that's going to be a really cool episode. So lots of content for the listeners this week. Thank you guys and appreciate you. And we'll be talking to you soon.